This is Morning Motivation for Educators on the Bee Podcast Network. Learn about all the shows at beepodcastnetwork.com. You'll hear from a variety of formal and informal educators who help put this podcast together. If you'd like to contribute your voice to the show, please go to morningmotivationedu.com to apply. I am Karen Dudek-Brannan. I was a school SLP for 14 years where I specialized in language literacy and executive functioning and also held various teaching, leadership, and research roles. Now, I am the host of the De facto Leaders podcast on the Bee Podcast Network, where I help school therapists, teachers, and administrators be leaders on their school teams, no matter their job title. Today, I'm sharing a little bit about a topic that I just discussed on the De facto Leaders podcast in episode 121, and that is the topic of whether or not we all have an inner voice. Now, you wouldn't think that this would be controversial, but it actually has sparked some controversy for my readers and listeners, so that's why I wanted to share the high points of that episode with you, because this can really be a great proactive thing we can do that can benefit our own mental health, our ability to plan and prepare, as well as manage anxiety. Being able to engage in self-talk can be part of how we plan our day. It can be how we talk ourselves through challenging situations, how we self-regulate, as well as how we manage our beliefs about certain things. And it can be really important in building resilience, as well as a growth mindset. This is something that I focus a lot on building when I am working on language and executive functioning, because a lot of the tasks that we do that require us to engage in productive behavior or have a conversation with someone require us to do some kind of internal dialogue before we actually get to those external behaviors, which could be responding to someone in a conversation, filling out a planner that we're using in order to plan ahead, or even just be able to stay on track when we're paying attention to something. The reason that it's controversial is because if you do a Google search, there's debate on whether or not we all use internal language the same way, especially when we're thinking about things related to neurodiversity, when we're considering how we might support people with ADHD and autism. And really, it's the debate between understanding if someone has a brain difference and how much we should try to remediate versus compensate and acknowledge the skills and tendencies that are already there. So I'm going to quickly answer the main questions that I addressed in episode 121 of De facto Leaders. And then if you want more information and a more detailed discussion, you're welcome to check out that episode. So the first question is internal language the best tool to use for reasoning and completing complex tasks? And that question comes from, again, the debate of, do we compensate or do we teach another skill that's not there based on the way that someone's brain is working? And really, the short answer to that question is that yes, there are certain tasks that we have to do in our day-to-day lives that require us to engage in language and use our inner voice. And the reason that I've had people debate me on this is because some people say, well, when I'm planning, I see pictures in my head. I don't see words. I don't use language. And that is absolutely true. We also, while we're thinking about what we need to do during the day, we are also using visualization. The language and the pictures have to go together. The reason that it's helpful to also use self-talk is because in order to get through your day, often you do have to be able to write things down and use those additional tools that require us to use language, like making a list, putting things down in a calendar, and so on. So yes, some people might have a tendency to see pictures rather than use words, but it is beneficial for us to also be able to pair that with language. And then the other question is that if someone doesn't have an inner voice, should we help them build one? So if you have someone who has ADHD, this could be true for autistic people as well, they might not be engaging in that internal dialogue and self-talk. So this is true with kids, and this may also be true with adults who have ADHD or other brain differences. And again, the question comes down to, do we acknowledge what's there, or do we try to change the way that their brain works? There are many things that we have to do on a day-to-day basis where if we're not engaging in an internal dialogue, it's going to be very difficult for us to complete the task successfully. You may know this if you are very busy and you have to think about, okay, I have to go home. I have to figure out how long it's going to take me to get home, get groceries, and make dinner. You're talking to yourself while you're doing those things. So it's an important tool that we use in order to self-regulate and plan our day. And so if you don't have that inner voice, it is beneficial for us to build one. So this is true if you're working with kids. This is true if you are working on how to be more productive and self-regulated yourself. Going back to the idea of a growth mindset, there is evidence that certain people do not engage in as much self-talk. And there's also evidence that we can improve these skills with practice. So there's evidence that we can do something about this. We can change our brains, and it's to our benefit to do so, especially if we're struggling in certain areas. Thanks for listening, and whatever role you have in education, we have a podcast for you at bepodcastnetwork.com. Who among your friends and colleagues needs to hear this message today? Please share it with them right now.